Liar, a book by W.P. Thrift, read by name redacted. Chapter 6, A Father Figure. Two things he'd learn about the boy later on. One was that the boy's looks took after his mother, and two was that his name was Daniel. For now, though, he knew nothing about the kid other than he was a stranger who'd invaded his apartment. He knew the invasion wasn't the kid's fault. He knew his powers had conjured this boy into existence. He felt dizzy, like he'd been struck in the head with a baseball bat, except without the pain or possible concussion that would follow. Staggering in the doorframe, Daniel walked over to him, asking if he was okay, offering to help him stand up. He felt incredibly uncomfortable with this boy, that he felt like he didn't know it all, putting his hands on him. Larry realized he'd shouted at the boy not to touch him, but the voice felt so distant. He wasn't sure if this was a panic attack or the results of stepping over the threshold into a splintered universe. Either way, he'd eventually make it to the couch and sit down for a long time, while Daniel poured him a glass of water and dropped some ice in it, telling him that drinking it would help. After his nerves began to calm down, Larry did some breathing exercises he'd learned while coping with the loss of his mother a week ago, before she'd been revived. His head cleared enough that he really began to feel like he was back inside his own head, in control again. "Hey, sorry for shouting earlier. You didn't do anything to deserve that," Larry said gruffly. He actually felt bad about shouting. It had caused his kid to recoil, a look of fright upon his face. Somehow, the memory of that expression was really getting to him, really hurting him. That was entirely on me. I just had a dizzy spell, and kind of lost myself there for a minute. "It's okay, Dad," Daniel said simply, though a look of relief washed over his face as he said it, implying a deeper emotion was felt internally than he was speaking aloud. Looking at this stranger in his apartment, Larry couldn't help but wonder what he was doing here instead of being at his mom's place. No, the lady didn't think I was honest about the kid, but lying about him living with his mom? Maybe this is just the kid's default starting position. He was standing where the cat was. I should drive him to his mom's then, drop him off. "Hey, kid," Larry said, "this might be weird for you, but mind if I ask you some really obvious questions?" "Huh, why?" Like when someone has a stroke or something, doctors ask them things like what day it is, who the president is, that kind of thing, right? Well, I just want to make sure that dizzy spell earlier didn't damage my brain, so mind if I ask you some obvious questions like that? Sure. The kid didn't even question why he was being asked these things, instead of Larry being the one to answer them. That's exactly what Larry was hoping would happen. "So, what's your name and your mother's name?" "I'm Danny, and Mom's Cynthia," the boy said. "Daniel, then," Larry said, not liking the more childish-sounding name Danny. Daniel flinched at being called Daniel, an involuntary sneer creeping into the corner of his mouth before he could catch it and suppress it. "Where does your mother live, and when is she expecting you back home?" "Huh?" Daniel was confused. "I live here. What do you mean, when's she expecting me?" "Does your mom live here?" "No." He tensed up and looked down. That was clearly a sensitive question for him. "Crap. So I'm a single dad. Perfect. There's got to be some way I can get his mom to take him. I got to go that route. I don't want to use my powers to just remove him from existence. That would be cruel. Just get his mom to take him. Easy." Larry decided to stop with this line of questioning, and instead asked Daniel what he wanted for supper. To his relief, Daniel just wanted pizza to be delivered, so Larry got right on his flip phone and ordered that, Daniel mocking him for still using such a phone. Daniel pulled out his own smartphone to show it off, and Larry had half a mind to take it from his son, just so he'd have one again. But no, getting a new phone was on his to-do list. He needed to just find a new store and get one from there. Soon as things calmed down in his life a bit, it would be the first thing he did. Currently, while things were still chaotic, Larry's only focus was on getting pizza delivered and feeding this kid that kept calling him Dad. It didn't feel entirely unlike coming home to find out he had a cat, except he definitely wanted to give this one away. He got the feeling that, unlike the cat, Daniel wouldn't be happy about just sleeping on the couch. Oh no, Larry suddenly realized. This is a one-bedroom apartment. Where does Daniel sleep? "Hey, Daniel, where's your bed?" Daniel was about to answer, but his pupils suddenly went small, and his face pulled back in fright. He really didn't seem to like that question. He trembled at it until Larry changed the subject, asking him what he thought about baseball, literally the first topic to pop into his mind. While Daniel went off talking excitedly about baseball trivia, Larry was lost in thought, trying to figure out how he could accommodate a whole extra person living here. Daniel's life was seemingly both a blank slate and something that had previously existed. Over pizza, Larry determined that Daniel was clearly educated up to a middle school level, except Daniel responded with the same vacant yet scared expression from before when asked which school he went to. Larry decided over supper that he would have to head out right after the meal to buy a futon for Daniel to sleep on. He could put it in the living room somewhere out of the way. That was the best option, as Larry didn't feel comfortable at all having someone else sleeping in the same room as him. The cat was kind of an exception to this rule, as the cat would come in and sleep on his bed after he was already asleep. Though if Daniel did that, I would likely still have a problem with it, Larry considered. There was also the very pressing matter of Larry needing to return to work. While he wanted to stay home for a few more days and settle the whole matter of moving Daniel in with his mom, he couldn't just keep shirking his job. He just received a huge promotion that was going into effect very soon. He needed to return to the office building to at least start moving his stuff from his cubicle into his new office. Because of that, he needed to find somewhere to put Daniel. The easiest and most affordable daycare for his boy would be a public school somewhere, so he needed to get started immediately looking up the nearest middle school to enroll the boy at. After buying and setting up the futon, Larry went to the computer in the living room and started browsing local schools. Glancing back to see how Daniel was getting along, he saw the boy sitting on the couch playing with Sherbert. The TV was on, but his kid seemed more interested in his cat than whatever program was playing. Larry couldn't help but smile at this scene. For a split second, he was tempted to call off trying to find the mom and get rid of the kid. But no, a child isn't the same as a new pet. Daniel would require a lot more than just food and a bed. He'd need a real parent to raise him, and Larry just couldn't be that parent. Maybe in another lifetime, but not this one. At least when he was dressed up in his black blazer and dark blue dress pants and a red power tie to tie the whole ensemble together, Larry gave off the impression of being someone that well and truly had his life together. That was the ideal appearance for him when he arrived at the elementary school very early the next morning before 7 a.m. to finish enrolling Daniel in school. He told the principal that if he checked his records, he'd see that all the information about Daniel's previous school had already been sent in and filed away by the secretary. The principal checked his computer, and sure enough, all the information was there. So the principal trusts new parents. Larry couldn't fight back a smile, knowing that he'd just gotten away with that slight alteration of reality. Everything was in order, as the principal now had all the necessary information, including documents detailing that Daniel had all of his shots. He handed Larry some forms to sign, and with that a teacher appeared in the doorway, Daniel's new homeroom teacher. She'd been called in to meet the kid before class. Daniel was still just young enough that the teacher would want to give the classroom a proper introduction to him on his first day at a new school. Daniel had sat quietly in the chair next to his dad the entire time he'd spoken with the principal. He remained quiet as he was asked to get up and follow the teacher off to the classroom. School started at 8 a.m., and Larry had to be at work by 9 a.m., so that gave him an entire hour to walk across town to his job. He had no final words for his kid other than, "Good luck, enjoy." He just didn't know the boy well enough to say more than that. And if he was able to track the kid's mom down and make that she take him, he never would need to know any more about him. I make just one mistake one day, and now I have to deal with a kid I didn't want for life? Come on, who could that possibly ever happen to besides me? Larry grumbled internally, clueless to the irony of his own line of thinking. He left the school and headed to work. He realized that he would absolutely have to buy a car if he couldn't get rid of the kid. He'd probably force himself to finally upgrade his apartment to at least a 2-bedroom one as well. He couldn't just keep walking his kid to school every day, then walk what felt like halfway across the city to work. He was already sweating and felt disgusting under his suit just from going from the apartment to the school building. That also majorly cut into his sleep, having to wake up so early. Tomorrow he wouldn't have to wake quite so early, since he wouldn't need to go inside the building to fill out paperwork again, at least. He could probably even let his kid walk to school on his own now that the boy knew where it was. But was the kid old enough to make that walk on his own? At what age is it acceptable to let your kid venture across the city by themselves? Was Daniel emotionally mature enough to handle that? Oh, crap! Larry had a sudden realization. School gets out at 3 p.m. and I don't get off work until 5 p.m. How the hell will Daniel get home if I'm not there? Maybe Daniel could walk home on his own, but Larry hadn't told him he'd be doing that. They hadn't talked about it at all. Also, maybe Daniel totally wouldn't be willing to walk across the city by himself, so Larry would be effectively abandoning his kid to the wilds if he wasn't there right at 3 p.m. He couldn't leave work early today, not after being absent for nearly 2 weeks now. The kid just popped into my life yesterday. How the hell was I supposed to think of all this on the fly? Larry tried to fight with himself, to determine if he was just a terrible father for not thinking of these things, or if it was truly asking too much of him to have considered all these variables in his new reality. He reached for his flip phone. He couldn't stop to find somewhere private to have a conversation because he had to be at work on time today, no more being late after taking so much time off. He'd just have to walk and chat at the same time, like so many jerks he always hated to see walking down the sidewalk talking loudly into their phones. "Mike?" Larry said when his friend answered. "I need a huge favor from you." "Sure, what's up?" This is going to sound super weird, but I need you to pick a kid up from the elementary school on East and Vine Street at 3 p.m. today, okay? Just think of it as, I don't know, I'm babysitting someone. Except you're going to be babysitting them until I'm off work. I'll be back at my place at 5:30, same as always. Could you be there with him? What kid? What are you talking about? His name's Daniel. He's about 10, I think, and... You mean your son? Larry, you had me worried for a second. I didn't realize you were messing with me. Sure, I love hanging out with Danny. I can take care of him today, no prob, Mike said. You know, Daniel, you know I have a son? Sorry, I usually try to play along with you, but I just don't get what you're going for here. How much do you know about him? I mean, I've known him his whole life. Are you going to quiz me on him or something? Yes, something like that. Who's his mother? Cynthia, the bitch that broke your heart? Where is Cynthia? Do you have her phone number? I don't have your ex's phone number, no. And I'd imagine she's where she's always been. Always? She never moved? You two never did move in together, no. Which I told you was a red flag with anyone you're having a baby with. Look, Larry, why are you asking me these things? Did you hit your head? YYEs. I have partial amnesia. You're screwing with me. I'm not. Larry couldn't tell his friend that before yesterday this whole family of his literally didn't exist. But apparently in Mike's reality they'd always existed, which was heart-poundingly exciting and terrifying for Larry, as that meant his friend could have the answers to virtually all of his questions. Well, she lives in the mansion at 24th and Vine. Not too far from that school, actually. Maybe another 20 miles out? 20? Larry's heart sunk. He couldn't walk that far in a day. He'd need to get a ride there, or have her come and meet him. Wait, did he just say... Did you just say mansion? Yeah, she's pretty loaded. Why the hell didn't she take Daniel when we broke up? Did she not know how much smaller my place was than hers? How the hell was I supposed to afford a kid on my old salary? I mean, she paid alimony. And you did fight like hell to keep Daniel in the breakup, add to the fact that she didn't try very hard to keep him. Was I just a crazy fling for her that she tried to forget? Larry wondered. This is insane. I found a rich girl, had a kid, broke up. This isn't normal. This isn't real. This is fantasy. This is pure fantasy. This is a romance novel. Freaking Teresa. It's her interpretation of reality. I'm trapped in her version of reality. This is how she thought my relationship went down, so that's what happened. So, Ike, I'll see you at 5:30, and you'll remember to pick Daniel up at school today? Yeah, I'll definitely remember. See you later today, then. Mike flipped his phone closed and found himself lost in thought the rest of the way to work.